Okay, so we're going to be working on modeling the desk in the classroom, continuing where we left off last week. So first thing I want to do is open my bill of materials, which you can find from last week's agenda on Friday, and get an idea again what my parts are. And these are just the parts that I measured out or identified first, then measured out for the desk. So from before, I believe we finished the tabletop and table supports, but we still need to build these other pieces and then put them all together to make the desk. So I hope by now you all are using keyboard shortcuts. A really good keyboard shortcut is Command and then hold down Command, then hit the Tab button. And every time I touch Tab, it will go to any of the open programs that I have right now. On a PC, I believe it's just Control and Tab. So I'm going to go over to Sketchup and take a look at where we left off last week. So far it looks like we've built one of the supports, the table supports, and the tabletop at this point. To get a better idea what our end product's going to look like, I'm going to also open up the built desk. Oops, that's not it. This one, right. So this is what our end product should look like, what we want it to look like. So I have different ways I could go about doing this. I could right now build, or copy I should say, another one of these and then paste it and then put it over there. That's a decent method. But I think a smarter way to go would be to make one side in its entirety and make that a group. Remember last week I taught you how to make something a group? And then copy that and paste it so I can then place it. It's less work for me and less error. So I realize I have one of these so far. I need to make the table legs next. I'm just kind of working my way down this list. So next on the list would be table legs. So looking at these dimensions, I have a 7 by 3 cross section, then I need to make it 78 long. So I'm going to go back into here and maybe go to a standard view to make it easier, like this. And really, another thing I notice is that this cross section is the same cross section that I need to make, the same one I made before. So why not just copy and paste that? And if I draw a rectangle around this, and then Command C, I can click over here and Command V, and I can see I have a whole nother one of these. Now that's a good start, but in looking at my list, my bill of materials, the length of the one I just copied is 100, and the length of what I want is 78. So I'm going to need to trim that down. So I should be able to use just the push-pull tool and do that. So 100 minus 78 is, sorry, excuse me. Yes, 100 minus 78 is 22, so I need to take off 22. So if you look in the lower right corner right now, I need to just put in a 22 right now, 22. And let's take a look at what we have. So now you can see I have a shorter version of what I just had before, which is exactly what I need for the table legs. So looking at this, I just built this by doing those steps. And again, remember, the best way to do this is to, whenever you're stuck, pause the video. And don't just watch the whole video through, but when I do something, pause the video and then you do it. So now we need to place these two on the pre-made support. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to rotate this thing so it's at 90 degrees with this one, right? So before I do those things, well, actually no, let me just try it so you can see. So I'm going to rotate this one, and I'm going to select it first by triple clicking. And that way I'm able to select just that. Then I'm going to use the rotate tool. And notice when I use the rotate tool, it can line up all kinds of different ways. If you look at the axes here, I need to rotate this thing 90 degrees on the red axis, this red axis. So to make sure that I'm doing that, one thing I can do is I can use the arrow keys in the lower right-hand corner of your keyboard. And if I do that, I can lock it to different planes. If I press the right arrow, it locks it to the red plane, meaning I can only rotate that way. So let's do that. First thing I'm going to do to start a rotation is I'm going to pick where I'm rotating from. So I'm just going to click right here at the midpoint. Now the next thing I can do, the next thing I'm choosing is what is going to be my place where I push it to rotate it. I like to choose something predictable and easy, so I'm going to choose this endpoint. When I click there, now I'm moving the endpoint to make it rotate. Notice how it's only rotating in the red axis, which is what I wanted. And because SketchUp uses snap to, when I get close to something predictable, again, like 90 degrees, it snaps to it. If you look in the lower right-hand corner of my screen, you can see it says 90, and that's what I want. I can also just type in 90 and get the result that I want. I'm going to move this so it's easier to see. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to move this guy over so it's underneath this one, like this, right? Like this side. So move works just like the other stuff does, where you can lock it into whatever axis you're trying to use. Notice if I click this and then move it, oh, whoa, that's no good. One way to avoid that is to use the triple click method, then move it. And now I am moving what I want to move. But another way, and probably a better way, so you can make things easier for yourself, is to do what I taught you last week, which is to make this item its own group. Then we can make one big group later. So I'm going to triple click it, right click it, and then select Make Group. Now, anytime I click this even once, the whole part is selected. And then when I want to move it, it's real easy to move. I can just click anywhere and move it. Okay, it's important that you use the zoom in ability on SketchUp a lot to select the things that you want, because we need to select just the top part of this corner, because we're going to move it by that corner to get it to match up with the bottom of this one. We want it to go in there. So let's do that. Again, selecting the Move tool, I'm going to pick this corner. I'm going to move this thing right to that corner, just like that. Now I know that's not where we want it to be ideally, because if you look at this, which is what we just did, right? We just moved this piece to this one. You can see that there is a distance here. I'm here right now, but we need it to be about there, right? We need to move it that distance. So this should be a distance that you measure by going to the actual item, going to the desk and using your meter stick and measuring it. And I did not put that distance on the bill of materials. The bill of materials is just for parts. How many parts do we need? What are their names? And how big are they? When you're actually making the real object, though, you need to know dimensions and distances, which we'll discuss later. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to try to make it close, just for this exercise. And so I think that, actually, no, I'll measure it from my prior example. So if you use the measure tool, this is something you may not have used, the tape measure tool. You can click on 2 points, and you can use it just like you would your meter stick. That did not work. Let's try again. There we go. And that says 12.1 millimeter. So I'm just holding it there. I'm not clicking, and it's giving me the number. I'm going to say 12 millimeter will be the distance we we want to move ours. So, oops, wrong one. So, going back to our project, we need to move this one this way 12 millimeters. So, I'm going to select it by triple clicking it. Oops, no. Now that it's a group, actually, if you notice when you triple click something and you want to edit something that's a group, when it's already a group, if you triple click it, it isolates it and puts it alone. And then you can do things like edit it from here. Should be seeing explode. Oh, there we go. So if you just click once and right click, you can make it not a group if you want to. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to move it, and I want to make sure that I'm moving it in the right direction. If you look at this, if I just kind of move my mouse, this is the direction I want to move. And if you look closely, you can see this is actually on one of the axes because of the way I built this. This is on the green axis, I believe. So again, I can hold down the Shift key. There we go, that's a better view. If I hold down the Shift key, that will force me to only move it on the axis that I've chosen. But when I do that, it's difficult to enter in the distance I want. So another way is to use these arrow keys like I just told you. So I'm going to keep pressing different arrow keys until I get the green axis. Let's see. There's the red. There we go. So now that's stuck on the green axis. And before we noticed that I needed to make it 12, so I type in 12, return. And now it's where I need it to be. So we have the top part, and we need another leg to go opposite it. So I'm going to use my standard views with the keyboard shortcuts and get to the one I want. This one looks good. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this one and put it over there. Now there's different ways I can do that. Once I copy it, I can rotate it around and put it in the spot I want. I can also do a scale. That's what I mean to say. I can also do a scale, which would be a good idea because that'll flip it around to the opposite side. So what I think I'll do for this one is just copy and then paste it over here and then scale it so it flips it. That might be easier than trying to use the rotate tool, but it's up to you. We'll try both ways. So I have this selected. I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcuts. Command-C on a Mac, I think Control-C on a PC. And then click over here and paste. And now I have another copy of it. So I realize, though, that this is facing the wrong way. I need this one to face the opposite way. So what I'm going to do while it's still selected is I'm going to choose the Scale tool. And again, I'm going to go back to the same standard view I was on to get a side view of this thing. And I can just grab any of these little buttons. There's a bunch of buttons that they have, and when you click them, it allows you to move this and scale it how you want. So I could make this thing bigger this way, which I'm not going to do. So I need to undo that. Or I can make it scaled negatively in a direction I choose. So that's what I am going to do. So remember, once I click the button, I can move any way I want. But I want this to be locked to, no, actually, if you click the middle one, you can only go this way, so that's good. But if you look in the lower right corner at the numbers as I do this, how they're changing, I want to flip this thing around. So I need it to be a -1 for both the upward and down and left and right direction. So if you look right now, it says red, green scale. So the red value, I need to be -1, and the green value, I also need to be -1. So I'm going to click that. And if you look at that, that should have flipped it around. And it did. You can see that now it's just kind of a mirror of the other one. So now I'm ready to move this back to where it needs to be. So I'm going to use my Move tool. Now this stuff's a lot easier for me to do because, ooh, I made a poor choice. I should not have grabbed it from there. I should have grabbed it from the other corner. But this stuff's a lot easier for me to do because I have a mouse. So get a mouse. I'm going to move this again so this corner matches with that, just like we did with the other one. There we go. And now I remember from last time this needed to go 12 millimeters this way. So I'm going to use the move tool again. Doesn't really matter where I click, as long as I'm selecting my object. Good. And I'm going to put in a distance. I know I'm on the green axis right now, but I could always lock to it, because otherwise it jumps away like that. But I'm just going to type in 12, enter, and now I should be where I want to be. So what I'm showing you now, the techniques I just showed you, is the way that we're going to build this in its entirety. So I'm going to start going a little faster now. Pause the video whenever you need. So I need to make these cross supports now, which I think are the third item on the list, or fourth item. Table crossbar. And this is just like the one I just made, however, it is 74. So time to do the copy and paste. Oh, notice that I am not allowed to push and pull while something is in a group, because you cannot select individual parts of a group. You can only select the entire group. So I have ways I can get around this. I can just click once to select it, right click and choose explode, and now it's no longer in a group, and I can click individual parts, lines, or walls of this, and then I can push pull. So I think I said the last one I made was 78, and I need a 74, so I need to take off 4. Type in 4. All right, I'm going to make this a group again. Triple click, right click, make a group. And then I'm going to copy it. Now I have 2 of them. And looking back at this, we can see now that these 2 need to go here, across here, and across here. Now I just kind of eyeballed this, so you might want to change these distances, because when you look at the desk, this one's too big, I think. This distance is too big, and this distance is too small. But this is just an exercise. When you do the real one in the library, you'll need to measure. But I'm just going to copy this example, so I'll use the measurement tool again. And you can, if you want to, you're welcome to use my measurements. You don't have to measure it out for this exercise. Oops, I did not see that. Try again. I'm going to say 24. I'm going to use 24 because I feel this one was too long. Just want to get a better view of this. Remember, okay, so the flat side up on both pieces. First thing I got to do is rotate this so it's 90 degrees rotated along the, I think that will be red axis, but I'm not sure. Let's try. Rotate. Yeah, that'll be green axis. So I'm going to lock this to the green axis. And I'm just going to rotate it about the middle. It's fine. No, that was wrong. It's not the axis I want. Yeah, red axis. So I'm going to lock this to the red axis. Like that. Choose that. Choose the endpoint. And then make sure that my angle is 90 and click. Now I need to move it into place. So just to get it to a starting point, why don't I just move it there? That's fine. It's like this. Notice I'm doing a lot of zooming in and zooming out and rotating. When I use the rotate tool, it's important that I know where I'm rotating from. And I'm not using big, long rotations. I'm using smaller ones. So don't drag it for a huge distance if you want to get the results you want. So I'm just going to place this. Here's a good teachable moment. So right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grab this edge, but I can't on this side, but I can't see it because it's behind something. So I'm going to select that view, and that way, when I select the wireframe view, I'm able to grab something that's kind of see-through on the other end. And now, if I don't like that, I can go back to, I believe this is the standard view. All right, so I knew this thing was supposed to be 24 from here down, but what is it now? Am I in the right place? Probably not. Oops, not from there down, from there down. So you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to, because I want to move this away from the tabletop because it's getting a little bit jumbled. I'm going to select all these and make them into a group. So the way to select multiple things is to click on something, then hold down the Shift key. And now I can click on other things. Notice when I hold down the Shift key, this plus and minus shows up. Now I can select multiple things. Although, I see a problem. This is not a group yet. So I'm going to make that part into a group by triple-clicking it and then say Make Group. Now when I select it, the whole thing gets grabbed, not just part of it. So again, hold down the Shift key, and I'm selecting all 4 pieces. Right-click, I'm going to make that into a group. So now I can move this at will however I want. In this case, I just want to get it away from the tabletop so it's not so confusing, so things aren't like mashed together. But realize now that I want to move this closer to this, I need to make this not a group again. So I need to right-click on it and select Explode. And now I can move the individual parts. And I'll be making that a group again once I finish this part. All right, so right now my measurements from here to here is what I need to figure out to see how much I need to move this thing. So I'm going to kind of just grab that corner, use the rotation tool, and get down to that corner. And it says I'm about 50, give or take, right? So 50 minus 24 is 26, so I need to move that part up 26. So I'm going to click once to select it. I'm going to move it. It doesn't really matter where I move it from. I'm just going to click anywhere on there. I want to make sure I'm on the blue axis. So I'm going to use the arrow key to lock to the blue axis. I press the up arrow. And we wanted our number to be 26, so I'm going to type that in. 26, return. And now I know I'm in the right spot. Now one cool workaround that I didn't think of that I probably should have done is this is already in a good position. So I could copy it again and just kind of forget about this one rather than rotate. It's up to you. I'm going to try that now. I'm going to click this, Command-C, Command-V, and now look, it's already kind of rotated how I want it to be. I have it grabbed by the corner already, so I can cut out some steps by just placing this. Again, I can't see what I want to see, so I'm going to go to wireframe and just place this there in that. I think I'm in the right place. I might not be in the right place, we'll see, but I think I'm there. Place that right there. And then go back to the normal view and see what we did. It looks like I messed up. But it's still in an easier place to move now than it would have been if I would have used the one I copied before. So you see this one's kind of pushed over. Compared to the other one. So I'm going to just line it up with this one, and then I realize also I have another problem, that this part that I made, I must have measured wrong because it's not lining up perfectly. So what we'll do, just for the sake of this exercise, I think you're learning a lot, I'm just going to move this piece so it lines up with this piece. So select this. I'm going to use the Move tool and select this corner. I know I'm only moving for this first move on the green axis, so I'm going to use the arrow key and lock it on the green axis. Now to make it line up with this one, all I need to do is click the corresponding corner of that one. So I'm going to click right here. And now you can see it lines up better. Going back to our example model, we need to know what the distance is between these two. So I'm going to measure that. Again, if you're making the real one, you should have done these measurements when you measure on the real desk. So let's take a look. 17. We'll go with that. Even though, like I said, I didn't do a great job. So I have it selected now. I'm still on the Move tool. And so what I'm going to do is measure what I have and see how much different that is by 17. So selecting the measurement tool, I just want to know the distance from here to there. And that says 8.97. I'm going to call that 9. So 17 minus 9 is 8. So I need to move this down in the blue direction, 8. So select our part, select the Move tool. I don't want to rotate it, just move. Make sure I'm on the blue axis. I can see that I am right now, but if I move my mouse and I get off it, I don't want to mess up. So I could use the directional arrows again. Oops. Sorry about that. I could use the directional arrows again, or I can just make sure that I'm right on the blue axis and just type in 8. There we go. So now at this point, I have most of one side, but I still need to make this bottom piece, and then I'm going to show you how to bring in your casters. After I do that, after I do this side, and then I copy to this side, I want you guys to do this one and this one on your own. I'll give you this cross brace too. But at the end, when the video will end before you are finished. You'll have to do this piece, which I think I'm calling the bottom shelf. Then you'll have to do this piece, which I'm calling the horizontal brace, on your own. So I guess I should make this right here. And I'll make it the same way I made the other ones, by using the copy and paste and then shortening it. If I look at the dimension of that one, this is a vertical support bar. It has a length of 30, and I'll use this crossbar, which has a length of 74. So that means I'm going to have to take off 44 to get to that length of 30. So let's do that. I still have this leftover guy that I copied and pasted that I'm not going to use, so I can just use it. But remember, it's in a group right now, so I need to ungroup it by right-clicking and selecting Explode. So, did I say vertical support bar? Yeah, so I need to take off 44. So I'm just going to use the push tool to do that. Make sure that you're selecting what you want. Type in 44, return. And now I can see I have that little bar there. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and select it, triple click, make it a group, because if you don't, when you try to move it, you only move a little piece. I make that mistake all the time. So I'm going to select this corner. I know I need to move this to, ooh, it looks like I made a mistake. Where did I make a mistake? We'll see. I need to move this to the midpoint. Let me do that. So I might have made a mistake when I just made this piece. Let's see. Let's measure it. .30, which is what my measurement said. What did I have on here? I might have a bad teacher. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. And I made that one 20. That explains it. So I have a couple of choices here. I think the real desk is closer to 30. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to make this closer to the truth. So I'm going to come back into this one and let's make this correct. So this needs to be moved down. So I'm going to select the Move tool and really anywhere on the part. I need to make sure that I'm on the blue axis. I'm going to move it down 10. Now that looks better. Okay, not perfect. I can see I made some measurement mistakes here. There's a gap there and a gap there. But for the sake of this exercise, I think we can just leave it be. So now we have most of one side. Now what we need to build then is this piece here, which in the bill of materials I'm calling wheel supports. So that is a simple 10 by 12 cross-sectional rectangle pushed out to 100 millimeters. So that should be easy enough to make. I'm going to just go ahead and let's make it easy on ourselves, and I know that it's going to need to go this way, so let's make it on the red-blue axis, push it this way. That'll make it easier to move later. So I can go like this, and click, and I notice that I'm kind of not in the direction I want to be. So again, I should be able to use these arrow keys and fix it into the direction I want. And there's the one I want. I use the left arrow to do that. And this was a 10 by 12, so 10, comma, 2, return. So that's the cross section of the part I'm going to push. Then I just need to use the push tool and make this 100. So 100, enter. And now I can see that I'm close to what I need. Get in the habit. You can either draw a rectangle around this because it's at a good angle, or triple click, make this a group. Now again, when I move it, it'll go where I want, how I want it to move. So let's move it. For now, I'm just going to move it from this corner to that corner. I can see that's not centered very well, so I want this to kind of be in the middle. So I could either eyeball it or I can do the math. I always prefer that you do the math. So we need to make this distance here be the same as the distance here. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to measure from here to here. I see that's 3. 3 divided by 2 would be 1.5. So that means I need to move this guy 1.5 this way. So let's do that. Type in 1.5, and we're done. Another problem I see is that this is way off center this way. So I have the same problem that I had moving on the red axis, I now have on the green axis. So I'm going to do the same approach. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to measure from here to here on the green axis. So I have 24 millimeters. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So I need to move this 12 this way. So let's do that. Select it, move it. Make sure you're on the green. I can see the dotted line. I am on the green. Alternatively, I could use these arrow keys. Left arrow means locked on green. 12, return. Now we're getting there. I am not going to make these wheels. That would be too much work and too much time. So now is a good chance for me to show you something called Warehouse, SketchUp Warehouse. If you have not used it before, it's called 3D Warehouse. So I'm going to click that. Now the thing that I want is called a caster, C-A-S-T-E-R. And so I typed that search term in last time I was here. Yours will not be there, so you need to type in caster. So type in casters, enter. So these wheels that you see on the bottom, they're called casters. You can choose any one you want, because what we're going to do, no matter how big it is, we're going to just choose it, then we're going to scale it. This time I'm going to choose this one. I like this one because it's got the little lock on there, and if you look at our table, it also has that lock. So if I click Download Model, it gives me the option, do you want to put this directly into your current model? And that's what we want, so I'm going to click OK. Now you can see this big old caster, which is way too big, is stuck to my cursor. So I click when I'm ready to place it. And I realize if I look at this, I'm looking at something that's like a giant monster caster. This is something that maybe, I don't know, somebody from Lord of the Rings or something might use. Too big for us. So what do? We need to use the scale tool, which is this one. So I'm just going to pick a corner, and I'm going to drag it down to size. Now, I may have to do this a couple of times because I don't know if this is the right size yet. But I'm going to move it over closer to where it needs to be to get an idea. Using the Move tool, I know I want that this flat part there is going to need to stick to the bottom of that thing around there, right? So I'm going to grab it from a smart place. Choose something like this corner right there. And then when I move it, I can get it to stick close to where I need it to be. Okay? So looking at this, it's pretty close. I did a pretty good job of eyeballing how big it should be. But I realized that this plate is just a little bit too big still. So while it's still selected, I'm going to use the scale tool again. And this time I'm just going to drag it. Actually, I want it to be the same proportions everywhere. I don't want to stretch it out. So it's better to grab it by the corner. So I'm going to grab it by the corner and just shrink it a little more. And I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that. So that's good enough. So now I want to move this to the edge because if I look at our real desk, that is where it is. So select the part, click Move. Let's be smart and select this face here and that one there. Now I realize I have one of my casters for one side, and again, I don't want to have to bring the whole model again and then scale it again, so I'm just going to select it, Command C, Command V, and now I have another one. Let's put it, I don't really know where I'm placing it because I don't have a good place to grab it, but let's put it there. So the smart thing to do when we move this would be to grab it by this corner and put it in that corner, and that would get us pretty close to where it needs to be. So I still have the Move tool selected. I'm going to grab that, zoom in here. Let's get a better view. Okay, and then I'm just going to place it there. Not quite where I want to be because this is still off. So I'm going to move it again, and I'm going to select the midpoint of this line, which is there, and put it on the midpoint of the bottom line of this piece. So if I select midpoint, and then I come back up, I want to see it say midpoint again. There it says midpoint. And that's better. That looks much better. All right, so now if we look at our progress, we have one side and a tabletop. So let's get this where it needs to be. First thing I want to do, I'm going to draw a big circle, or sorry, rectangle around all of this. I'm going to right click it and make it one big group. And now when I move it, you can see it's stuck together. So I am going to use the Move tool again. I'm going to use the Move tool again, and I'm going to move it over to the bottom of the tabletop. So I'm going to select just here. Let's get under here. And let's just get it right there to start. It's not quite where I wanted it to be, so I'm going to have to do some more moving. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this so it's at the right angle with the desk. So while it's still selected, you can select the Rotate tool. And I want to rotate around the red axis, I believe. No, I always get this wrong. The blue axis. So I'm going to use the arrow key to lock to the blue axis. Choose this midpoint, that works fine, and then rotate 90. Almost there. Move this corner to that. Okay. At this point, you're halfway there. I think you have enough skill to do the rest, so you're on your own.